Good afternoon. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Corey Hart. I'm the product manager with RBI, and we'll be running through how to use SmartCharts and going through some tips and tricks for using the application, and hopefully, for your next listing presentation or price negotiation, these tips will help you out. The main goal of SmartCharts is obviously to put the data in your hands as an agent so you can represent the market in the truest way possible to get in front of some of the bad information that might be out there on some of the other sites. Our data is directly from the MLS, and so that makes it the most accurate and relevant data available. To back up, SmartCharts Pro is the service which I've noticed most of our attendees have already registered for. I'm going to run through the application, but just up front to give you some other resources that you can use should you run into issues or have questions about particular stats. If you click on the SmartCharts logo, if you're in the application already, I'm going to open it in a new tab. I'll probably be running through some of these pretty quickly, so some of the definitions and stats, if I don't hit them and you had questions about them, the best spot to look afterwards for support is on the support tab. There's a FAQ section, but this definitions tab is really, this has the definition for every metric that's available, what's a new pending, what is months of supply, etc. So this is a great tool to use if you do run into any questions as you're using the application. Also, after this webinar, I'll post this so you can see it on demand. We have older webinars down below, and so this will be at the top of the list. So if there's anything that I run through too quickly, feel free to come back and visit that page. Again, that's on the support tab inside the application. With that, I'll go ahead and get started on how to use the application and some of these scenarios in which agents have actually asked me, for specific scenarios that they're hitting in their business. If you have questions as I'm going through, go ahead and use the GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar panel. There's a questions tab, and I'll try to stop at a few points to make sure that I'm keeping track of those, and I'll also cover any questions at the end if I don't touch them midstream. Okay. I'm going to go a little off script today. Not that I'm always great at following the script, but I had an appraiser that emailed me earlier today. I'd spoken with him about a year ago about a different question, but he said, reading his email now, he's engaged to appraise a residence for purchase at $1.25 million, and it's in the 20015. That's in Chevy Chase in D.C. The banks come back with him for questions. They want an assessment of the subject sale price being above list price with a short marketing time. Long story short, I looked up the listing that he was actually talking about. It was on the market for 4 days, and it's already under contract. And they wanted to see substantiation and clarification in detail of current market conditions relevant to that property. So with that, I got back to Bert about that. It was 20015. So I'm going to run through quickly what we talked about, and then I'll back up and go through just the nuts and bolts of the product itself. But just for this particular scenario, you're an appraiser. A bank might be coming back saying, you're too high, too low. Can you substantiate? So 20015 was the listings. It was a detached home. That was the listing zip code. So I went down to the Explore section within Washington, D.C. So I'm at the Washington, D.C. level, and in Explore, I can see things like median sale price by zip codes. I can see 20015. That's in the Chevy Chase Friendship area. Is the second most expensive zip code in the city. I could switch this over to median days on market to see how, that listing that was only on the market for 3 days, how that looks compared to the rest. And I see for this particular zip code, the median DOM is 24 days. It was 24 days in February. So obviously this fast-moving listing was somewhat abnormal for that particular zip code, and that zip code isn't, I mean, everything in DC is moving quickly, but I can see that it's actually that particular zip code appears to be moving right around on average with the city as a whole. So diving into that zip codes page, so I just typed in 20015 and I picked it from this list. The application refreshes so that all the stats are pertaining just to that particular location. Dove into the charts. I knew that it was a detached sale, a detached listing, so I turned that on and then took a look at days on market for detached listings within that zip code. The median DOM was 8 days. So half of the detached homes in that zip code sold for 8 days or less. So it wasn't that abnormal. It's just the other property types moved that days on market up. But for this particular, apparently there's huge demand for detached homes in this zip code. The question regarding how the sale price was above list price and how that relates to days on market. So I knew this was a home that was on the market for 3 days. So we can take a look at pricing ratios by days on market. So what this is telling me is the median sold price to original list price for all homes there. Half the homes sold for 101.1% of original list price, which is extremely high. When I look at that for average, it's going to be even higher, 102.8%. In that particular breakpoint, which is in that 1 to 10 range, I can see 111.5% is the average SP to OLP. So odds are the bank was coming back saying, look, they put it on the market for, X amount of money, and it's probably a bidding war. How can we validate that it's okay to go for so much above the original list price? This is something that would help support. It's not abnormal, even going back really almost every month for homes that sold that fast in that zip code, it's above 100%. We could get into the median days on market for, for homes. I knew that it was in a 2,000 to 2,500 square foot range. 8 days is the median DOM. There weren't any sales the previous time, 26. So all of this data helps to support his case, which was, it's okay that this is coming in, that the loan would be more than, the sale price was more than the original list price. It's not that abnormal. This is an extremely hot market. And finally, that can be evidenced by the months of supply. There's only a half a month supply for detached homes in that particular zip code. What that means is basically for all active listings at the end of February, if no new homes came on the market, it would take half a month for all those active listings to be sold. 4 to 6 months is generally considered balanced. Anything lower than that is a seller's market. This is obviously a very hot seller's market. So those types of stats help to support the case for the price point that he was appraising. And then finally, we looked at the Detached All Local Market Insight Report, which can be broken out for detached only, and all this information, 104.2%. Year-to-date is 101.4% of original list price. The average days on market is higher. There probably was one with an extremely long list time, which can skew the average. Sales are up, and listing activity, while it's up, active inventory is still not satisfactory for demand. So that's just an example of the types of stats you can get into as an appraiser if the bank comes back and asks for substantiation of a given market. From an agent's perspective, I got a call from sort of one of our power users who had been on a previous webinar and saw where I'd gotten into the short sale, sort of the dilemma with trying to represent buyers that are going after a short sale. She called she wanted clarification on these metrics, but she was going into a to talk with the buyers that were interested in a few different homes in Prince George's County, one of which was a short sale, which was sort of their top of the list, and she wanted to be able to set their expectations correctly. And the way we did that was by getting into Prince George's County, and you can do this going down to the zip code subdivision level if need be, but just for a high level to set the right expectations, especially for a question like this, you know, what am I looking at? I'm a buyer, I love this home, I could get to contract pretty quickly, but what does that mean? How soon can I move in? So we went into the charts again, this time for Prince George's County, and there's a metric in here that's in the days on market category, and the median days on market, so that's pretty straightforward. That means half the homes went to contract in 30 days or less. Half the homes, obviously more. You could look at average days on market, but for short sales, the stats to pay particular attention to are these contract to settle stats. So median contract to settle means once the listing goes to contract, how long can we expect it to take before it finally settles? Because your buyer needs to figure out the plans for selling his home. Does he need to rent back, et cetera? So just because you get to the contract phase, for a standard sale, 44 days is the median contract to settle in Prince George's County. Usually we'll see 30 to 45 days. But when we turn on short sales, so for all, it's 44 days. So homes are taking, after contract, 44 days to get that new buyer to have ownership of the home, and bank's approval, et cetera. Short sales, quite different story. It's 122 days. So, 4 months sitting in the contract that's the norm for short sales. And we can see that's a pattern that's been pretty consistent over time. Average is going to be even higher because those outliers that take even longer can muddy that up. So up to 150 days, 140 days on average. That's good information to offer your buyer if you're in a market that might have more short sales. Short sales aren't as big of an issue as they were obviously 3-4 years ago because prices have come back up, but this is information that helps you to set the right expectations, especially if they do decide, I don't care, I'll wait, and they go forward. When you're 2 months in and they're saying, why aren't you working with a bank, et cetera, you're obviously going to do everything you can, but this helps to say, this isn't abnormal. I'm not letting you down. I'm not, not pulling my weight. It's just, it takes a long time for these short sales to get approval. The other piece to look at on this is in our supply and demand section, and that's where we have months of supply, obviously, but seller success rate. So for all homes that go to contract, they can either stay in contract or they'll close successfully or they'll fail. So they'll basically either return the listing or get taken off the market without a successful close. Prince George's County, that success rate is a bit lower than elsewhere in the DC metro area. It's 68% for all homes, but for short sales, it's 40%. So 2 out of 5 short sales that get contracts, only 2 out of 5 are actually closing. 3 out of 5 are failing. So as an agent, that might be something you consider if you're getting into the short sale game. Granted, you can have short sale certification and really understand the process, but it's just something to keep in mind that there's going to be a bit of frustration, which I'm sure most of you are well aware of, but this is objective proof that the short sale market, it can be a sticky place. So that information she took to her buyer, and she's meeting with them this afternoon, but that maybe could have swayed them towards the standard sale that was second on their list, but it gives her more data to support. She's not going to tell them which to buy, but it gives them data so they understand the pitfalls that come with the short sale purchase. With that, I'm going to back up a bit. I got way into the weeds early. That was on my mind because I just had those conversations earlier this morning. So from an architecture standpoint, I'll go ahead and go out to the Northern Virginia level. just to give an overview of the product itself. There's the dashboard, charts, which I went through, and reports, which I went through just briefly. But for the dashboard, this is a good quick view of how the most recent activity for a given location compares to recent years. In real estate, it's as you all know, a very seasonal pattern. January, February, March. March, it starts to come back up, but the winter is down, not just for sales, but for listings and for prices. It's entirely, you can almost predict what it's going to do to some degree. So these market gauges give you a picture of that year-over-year comparison where I can actually look at the most recent month, which is February, and how it compares to its 5-year averages and the 5-year min and max for a given metric. What I mean by that is the boundaries here, so this is just looking at closed sales. The minimum February number is down here, so we're well above the 5-year minimum for February in sales. The max is set here. We're not at the max for sales, but we're near it. Where the line breaks, where the color breaks, that's the 5-year average for February, and the dial is obviously the most recent month. So February 2015. So we can see quickly that sales are above their 5-year average. New pendings are right at their 5-year average. Active listings are at a 5-year high. Months of supply, granted it's still extremely low for Northern Virginia, but months of supply is at 2.5. It's not at the 5-year max for this time of year. And like I said, 4 to 6 months is balanced, so Northern Virginia is very much a seller's market. You can scroll through more metrics, new listings 5-year high, median sale price 5-year high, median list price for actives is above the 5-year average, days on market, etc. So this Northern Virginia, it's sort of a mixed bag. Most signs are positive. Looking at Baltimore, and again, it's going to refresh based on the location. We can see 5-year high, 5-year high. Active listings aren't at the 5-year high like we saw in Northern Virginia. Months of supply is well below the 5-year average. So Baltimore, we're seeing year-over-year appreciation in sales. Maybe not, prices are relatively flat, but sales and pendings are up, even more so than in Northern Virginia and the DC metro area. But all of that you can gather just from that market gauges section. If you understand those market gauges, that's a great conversation starter for any listing presentation, just to run through those very quickly with the buyer to give a lay of the land. Further down in the dashboard section is the spotlight. Again, this is year over year. You'll see YOY. This is the percent change that you want to talk about. Month over month we have it, but really month over month is relatively meaningless because of the seasonality of the market. It's not meaningless, but it's something you need to make sure that you understand. It's not abnormal to see sales like in March. Our month over month sales are going to be up 20%, 25% most likely. So that YOY is really the indicator to use. The contract snapshot is a stack of those homes that are contracts and contingent contracts and closed sales. And we can see that it's down for Northern Virginia. It's up from last year, but it's still down overall from where it was in previous years when prices weren't quite as high and maybe there were more folks purchasing homes. The Explore section, I touched on this briefly in that first sample, but any of these metrics, sold listings, new pendings, all pendings, new listings, and so on, you can change these to pick the average SP to OLP. As I change the metric, obviously my list updates. These can then be sorted by last month or year to date, which gets more interesting once you get into March, April, May, and there's more data underneath it. Now we're just looking at 2 months worth of data. And so sometimes, especially if you're looking at zip codes, it can be pretty jumpy. So there's the county level. You can also look at average SP to OLP by cities and by zip codes. So I can see all zip codes within Northern Virginia for any metric that we report on, and this can all be exported to Excel by clicking here, and you'll get a CSV file with all of this data if you want to go and use it elsewhere. A nice thing for this, if you're, let's say that you're representing, your market is 20166 in sterling. This is a great way to give context to that market for your marketing material, saying, hey, the average SP2 sellers here are receiving the most amount of original list price, the fourth most in the entire area. Come list with me, and let's keep that trend going. You can also compare any of these metrics to the region overall. So if I was in Fairfax County, I'd see all these zip codes, and Fairfax County would be there, and I could see if my particular location, if my subdivision zip code is above or below the county average or the city average. So the Explorer is a great tool to sort of get a lay of the land, change this to whatever county you're interested in and explore away. In DC, so let's just look at the median days on market in the DC area. One zip code jumped out at me in DC. Let's see, Washington, DC. Let's put this by zip codes. So the default is median sale price. Switch this to median days on market. And we can see that year to date, 5 zip codes in January and January and February, 5 zip codes had a median days on market of less than 2 weeks. That's remarkably low for off market. We can dive into one of these. So 2002, there's a lot at play, but the ultimate driver of days on market being low, pricing going up, SP to OLP going up, is really supply and demand. And that's the most important metric to understand. And well, median sale price, et cetera, are important as well. But the underlying driver of most of these indicators is the months of supply. So if we dive into this, 2002, again, that days on market was what? 12 days in February. 18 days is the February average, but 12 days. Supply obviously is very tight. How tight is it here? It's at 1.2 months of supply. So basically, if no new listings came on the market, all active listings at the end of February would be sold essentially by the end of March. That puts extreme pressure on buyers, and that proves through the various metrics that you can get into in the charts section. So an overview again of charts, the metrics are broken into different categories. So there's market activity, pricing trends, pricing ratios, days on market, price per square foot, and supply and demand. Months of supply, which is the metric that I was just mentioning, is in the supply and demand section. Months of supply, 4 to 6 is balanced. This zip code hasn't been balanced, and even during the roughest times where nobody was buying and everybody was trying to get their home sold, it got up to 10 months. So that's in the dark days when we were coming through. We're in the post-bubble burst. We can see the improvement that was made over time. That months of supply for 1.15 for a zip code that actually has 40 or 50 sales a month, that's remarkably low. I'd want to represent buyers and sellers interested in this zip code because the success rate at months of supply corresponds pretty well with days on market. So we can see how high it had gotten during time when there was excess supply relative to demand, and just how low it's been for some time. So as I'm going through this, you can see that I'm changing things around the chart area, and the chart is updating accordingly. if I were to change this out to the DC Met, let's take a look at, median days on market for detached homes. Actually, probably attached. It makes more sense in this particular location. So I have attached homes turned on. I can see the median DOM is 16 days. This is in this location. When I update this location to, let's just go to DC Metro, so at a higher level, I don't need to redo anything that I've turned on. The chart's going to update relevant to that particular location that I've typed in. So this is a big time saver in SmartCharts. And RVI Expert, some of you were with us, for the last 3-4 years with RVI Expert. You'd have to go rebuild your charts every time. We've focused a lot on making sure that it's easy to navigate around different locations, different metrics, et cetera, all within that one charting space to save time, and hopefully it's an intuitive enough experience for you. I'm going to take a second now. I do see a question. Let's see. What would be the best information to use in a seller's presentation, especially if the seller wants to price too high? Okay, we can dive into that right now, actually. There's a great chart that at first might seem a bit scary, but once you've mastered this chart, it's the perfect chart for the question that's just been asked. A seller comes to you, you have a listing presentation, they've heard anecdotally that they've got some zestimate out there. That really was just a slip of the tongue. A zestimate that says my home's worth 25% more than maybe what your CMA as the agent dictates. The best way to walk them back down from that is go through and find median sale prices. One thing that you could do. I'm not going to dive into a particular zip code or subdivision at this point, but looking at pricing trends for, let's say that it's a 2,000 or 1,800 to, let's say it's a 1,900 square foot home. The median sale price over time in the DC metro area, and this would be at your zip or subdivision level, for that particular square footage range. This is obviously at the DC metro level, way higher than you'd want to get, but you can see that the median sale price is $525 in this area. You can look at those trends over time to tell them whether or not prices are moving up or down by switching over to the change from previous year. So here we can see that prices finally started coming back in this area in the late 2009 timeframe. That's when this is showing year-over-year percent appreciation. So, for instance, that 525,000 in February 2015 for this particular square foot range, that's 12.9% higher than it was in February 2014. So think back to when I said that year-over-year is the most important indicator of price movement. That's where that comes in handy. But the chart that I got off on a tangent, but the chart that I think makes the most sense and shows objectively what happens when you overprice a home, we can get at that through the pricing ratios section. So, and I'm going to switch this back to, I'll go ahead and do 1 year, and you can see where I'm changing the range of how far back you want to go. And I could also change it from monthly view to quarterly view. For something like this where it's just giving them context into the larger question of what happens when homes are overpriced, switch this over back to actual values. So the median sold price to original list price for this square foot range is 97.6%. That's not the chart I wanted to show you. You can plot out the average sold price to original list price ratio. So it's 96.5% in the DC metro area by days on market range. So 96.7 for all homes that sold in the fourth quarter. Those homes that sold in the fourth quarter that were on the market for 0 days is 100.3%. 1 to 10 days, 101.2%. 11 to 20, and so on, And once you have all of these turned on, especially in a market like the DC metro area and the Baltimore metro area where there's not a lot of latent, just inventory sitting around, things tend to move relatively quickly. These steps show you the impact that overpricing a home can have on the ultimate price you're going to receive anyway. So being able to say, look, I think this 25% higher rate that you gave me, or price that you gave me, I think that might be pushing it a bit. And if I'm right, then most likely you'd be sitting on the market for longer than you might want to, and ultimately the market forces are going to dictate the ultimate sale price that you'd receive anyway. Let's go back and look at the CMA, and I can help explain blah, blah, blah. This chart here is intuitively and just sort of anecdotally, most of you are aware of the impact the prices that DOM can have on price negotiations. This is objective proof, and this is a great chart to sort of understand and be able to explain to your sellers that might be coming in a bit higher than you want because of, maybe they got some ideas off Zillow or elsewhere that might not be up to snuff. Okay, so that's that question. I didn't see any others at this point. So to back up again on the how can smart charts be used to, this is a supplement to your CMA. It's it augments your brand in that you can, the number one question you're going to be asked, how's the market, what's going on around here? And rather than just saying, well, my partner Steve's got all kinds of listing, you can actually get into the data. The number one thing that was eye-opening to me, and I'm going to reset this, was the impact of seasonality, not just on sales, but on prices, DOM, everything. The seasons, if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'm thinking about selling now, but I want to get some stuff straightened out, I'm thinking maybe I'll wait until like November, that'll give me a chance to get everything in place. Being able to show them a chart like this over 10 years, so this is looking at sales over 10 years. This is, most people understand sales are go up in the spring and down in the fall and winter. Pricing trends over time. You can see spring, winter, spring, winter, spring and summer, winter. The time that you sell your home is very important in terms of getting if getting the most money for your home is of utmost importance, then it really makes most sense to wait until February or March. March, April, May. Actually, we did an analysis looking at things like, and I'm going to change this to line view. So this is the median sale price for homes that closed in a given month. With Smart Charts, we've added other metrics like the median sale price for median list price for sales, average sold price over time. You can see that seasonality. Switch this over to days on market, and you'll see basically the inverse. Spring, winter, homes take longer. Average SP to OLP ratio, and hopefully you're seeing how I'm changing metrics on the fly here. Not quite as pronounced, but you can definitely see those. So if I'm talking with someone that's interested in getting into the market to buy a home, and they're saying, well, there's not as many listings, we're in November, December, I want to wait until I see the most inventory available in March, April, May. You can tell them that's fine and there would be more listings available, but there's also more competition for those listings. If the time for bargains is really in the off-season time frame. We did an analysis where we looked at 10 years worth of data on a monthly basis over 10 years, and December is the best time to buy a home in terms of prices. 6% below the average for all months. So homes sold in December, it's 6% less than the rest of the year. The best time to sell a home is in May. That's when 7%, the median sale price is 7% higher than the rest of the month. The difference between May and December in terms of the average price over the last 10 years is a 13% difference. That's substantial, and it's meaningful, and it's something, you know, that charts like this can help explain why spring is a great time to sell your home and winter might not be that bad of a time to actually buy a home. That seasonality is important. Notice when I'm turning on metrics and I don't have any of these facets turned on, then I can add other metrics to them. So if I'm looking at, you know, price per square foot, I don't have any other facets turned on. You know, I'm just looking at all homes. So I can add metrics and chart more than one metric at a time. So I can look at median sold price per square foot for sold properties and compare that to the median list price per square foot for active listings over time. And I'm going to switch this back to just a one-year view. We'll look at bars. So I can see the median sale price. Half the homes in the DC metro area were on the market, were sold for $267 per square foot. Half the homes that are active are at $273. So this isn't that big of a discrepancy between the two. But the main thing I'm trying to point out here is once I've turned on two metrics in a particular group, then I no longer have that option of turning on multiple series facets at the same time. But I can switch this over, like if I'm looking at median days on market, and let's say that I have median days on market and average days on market turned on for, you know, whatever reason. So the median's 42 days, the average is 67 days for all homes. I can't chart, you know, what does this look like for townhouses versus detached homes? But what I can do is pick a particular home type, you know, for detached all. I can switch this to look at median days on market by list price range and pick one particular list price range at a time. As soon as I change this back to just look at the average days, one particular metric, so let's say I switch this back to average DOM, I can see that this has now become a pick list. So I have the option at this point to chart out what's the average days on market for multiple price ranges at the same time. I'm going to turn, there's not any of these in the DC metro area. So here, it's pretty remarkable that homes in that 800 to 900K range in this area are selling just as quickly as homes in the 300 to 400K range. But what hopefully you saw there is that I can turn on multiple property types, or, you know, I could look at that by living area square foot, or, you know, what does that look like for foreclosures versus short sales. Multiple with one metric. As soon as I do just one facet, then I can start adding metrics again if that's the route that I'm interested in taking. The other thing that you can do, if the scenario would be somebody's coming to you and this is too high of a level, but I'm getting a job in DC, I'd like to move to Fairfax, or I want to be as close in as possible, but I've got $400,000 cap. What's the market look like for that kind of price range? You can compare locations for a particular price range or home type and a metric, but the same rules apply. I can have one metric, one facet, and multiple locations. As soon as I turn on multiple locations, so let's say we're looking at pricing trends, and I'll switch this to median sale price. So one metric, and let's just say that they want a decent sized house, 2,000 to 2,500 square feet. So for all the DC metro area, the median sale price for this type of home is $575K, basically. I can then compare locations because, again, one facet, one metric. Now let's look at Fairfax County. You can see as I'm typing this in, just like changing locations up top, a pick list shows up. Fairfax County way is more expensive than the regional level. Let's see if we go further out. Prince William, which actually isn't even in the okay, so it's a hike, but 400,000. Maybe we look more in the further out suburbs. Prince George's County. Okay, so that is closer in and appears to have more. Half the homes that sold in Prince George's County were sold for 290,000 or less. So there might be more options for you closer in. I can still go in and change. I can switch this to show. Again, these compare locations are still turned on, still one metric. I can switch this to look at particular home types. Let's say that they actually wanted townhouses now that they saw how expensive it is. And as I'm making those changes, everything's updated with the location still turned on in the same metric that I had earlier. I've just changed my home characteristic. When I change metrics, which I can also do, let's see where days on market is lowest for townhouses in these counties, 32 days. So Prince George's County homes are moving fastest, and that has a lot to do with the actual affordability. Some people might be priced out. There's more demand for the lower price points in the Prince George's area, is what I'm reading that to say. I'm going to stop here to see if there's any questions. No. I'm running short on time, but I did want to get into the portability of these charts. So most of you likely have seen an agent or a friend or a colleague that has RBI metrics embedded on their website. These charts, the data within these charts, I'm going to reset this, and let's just look at something, just a real basic chart. Let's look at pricing trends for the last 5 years. And we'll look at the percent change to show just how well prices have done locally. I can download this data as a CSV or in Excel. So basically the data points would all show up. I can download it as a PDF if I wanted to, say, include it in an email as an attachment, or cut and paste out of my PDF, and I can also view it as a PNG. So that's the PDF view, and that's just a portable network graphic version. That PNG is the portable network graphic, and that's just going to be a chart like this, which I can then copy and paste and include in other materials outside if I don't just use the local market insight report as an attachment. Sharing, if I don't have a website or I'm not interested in building out statistics section on my website, but I am active on Twitter or Facebook, I can tweet or share this on my social network by clicking that share option. Now I have a URL to share and share from there. And then users that see that link will then be sent to this page, and they don't need to be SmartCharts subscribers to be able to see the information I'm trying to relay. Finally, the embed option is a great way if you want to build out your website to have a, if you don't want to reference SmartCharts Pro or share and send eyeballs to us, you can build out statistics sections within your own website. So all I did was click embed. I can do the auto update version, and what that means is that on the 10th of the month next month, when new stats come into the RBI system, your website spot will be updated with the March stats, and so on. It's basically a set it and forget it. You don't have to touch it again. You can set up if you're in, let's say, South Riding, you can set up a South Riding page and a Arcola page, stats page, etc. And any chart that you build within the application, you can then share outside of on your website in this fashion. I can pick the sizes. If I have a right rail that I want to use, I can click the smallest all the way up to 785 by 440, which is the largest size that we offer. So let's say that I want to share the medium-sized version on my site. We have a dummy sample site on ExactSite that I can show you how that's done. You're going to copy and paste this HTML. Even if you're not, don't let it scare you if you're not a coder, or if you don't understand code or HTML. I'll show you. It's not as scary as it might seem. So I've copied this snippet, and this is our ExactSite page. And these are charts that I've done in previous demos. So the WYSIWYG view, what you see is what you get. I'm going to just leave myself a note saying put chart here if I'm not comfortable with HTML, so I want to understand where I am. The design view, sometimes it'll be called WYSIWYG. There's also the HTML or source view. When I click on that, I see the HTML version. It's a little ugly, but where I put chart here, that's where I can paste that code snippet that I had previously copied. When I go back to design view, then I see that chart as well. I'll want to put language around it to help with SEO, to say, here's median sale price for X place. That'll help with your SEO. But it's that simple. Save it and publish it. And from now forward, until I delete it because I'm running out of space on that demo page, my actual website, my users that come and see it will be thrilled with my most recent chart that I've embedded. So we have some examples on our website of users that have done this. You can get as fancy as, if you have folks that can code, you can build this out as, you can have thousands of charts on your website, or you can just say, hey, here's the Northern Virginia area, and you just want to show that you're paying attention to the trends, and just embed a single, market gauge. And the embedding there, you don't have the size options, but it's the same fundamentals that I just showed. That's really about it. The reports, I didn't get into that. I didn't dive in very deep on them, but the reports are pretty straightforward. The reports are a great place if you're in a hurry and you want to, let's say you're going to an open house and you want to have some contact information and show that you're up on the market and you understand what's happening. You can print out a local market insight report. Let's say you're going to a detached home. You can print out a PDF, one click. This will have your branding on it. If you're an RBI, if you're a SmartCharts Pro customer, your branding will be up here. I'm an admin in this system, so it doesn't show this, but this should say, powered by Corey Hart with my address and contact information. So that's a great way. You can attach it to an email newsletter. You can, take it on to your listing presentation, then quickly walk through, the different sections, and hopefully they're intuitive enough to you. If not, again, you can go look at that terminology page, and there's also auto-generated narrative that you can basically copy and paste, use however you'd like to. It gets into what some of these important stats mean. I see some other questions. I'm going to wrap up there because we are tight on time, and I see a few questions. How do we have a link on website? Ask if I didn't answer that just now, I'm not sure when that came in. How do we have a link on website? I think that was asking about the embedding function. If not, then ask again, and I'll if you clarify, I can get into that. Is embedding only in Pro? Yes, it is. That's only available through SmartCharts Pro. So for the free version, so it's not the $23.99 a month. It's totally free because we're a subsidiary of MRS and we wanted to have some basic information available. You can get into you can get at the city or subdivision level. You can get at zip level, and you can get at the monthly, year-to-date, monthly reports. So these were basically around, these predated MRS, so we wanted RBI, so we wanted to make sure that we didn't take anything away that had already been available for free. We were trying to be sensitive to that. These reports, they won't have branding, your branding as a non-customer. But you can at least get at these basic things and take those with you on a listing or to a listing presentation or an open house. So that those reports are available for free. The interactive charts are not, and the Explore functions and the market gauges are also just for our Pro customers. If you want to just test it out, we do offer a 14-day test drive. It's free. You will be asked for your credit card information when you first sign up, but if you cancel within the first 14 days, no charges will be incurred until that 14th day, at which time if it's a monthly sign up, then it'll be the $23.99. If it's the annual, then it would be the $299.88, which is 12 months for the price of 10, but you have to pay up front. But both of those types, you can do the 14-day test drive to see whether or not it's something that you're interested in using, see how much it makes sense. Anyone on this call, feel free to email me. My email address is Corey, C-O-R-E-Y, at rbintel.com. Again, that's Corey at rbintel.com, and I can follow up. I'll be on vacation next week. But after that, I should be able to follow up with you if you have any specific questions. And I get a lot over the course of a week and a month. So feel free to ask away, and hopefully I can help you out. I think that's all the questions. And I thank you for your time. Hopefully, I know I jumped around a bit this time, but hopefully you gained something from your time spent here today. Have a great rest of the day, and hope you have a busy spring. Thanks.